Are you thinking about buying a home in 2024? Well, I've got the top 3 most costly mistakes right after this. Hey, it's Ryan Skaggs with the Mortgage Minute, and today we're going to talk about the top 3 most costly mistakes. Now, before we get into those top 3, I put out weekly videos on the channel. I'd be forever grateful for that subscribe. Click that like button and then click that bell icon to be notified as you can see all the weekly videos that I'm putting out. Now, let's talk about tip number 1. And this is probably known, easy. Oh my gosh, how is this possibly a tip? But not overpaying. What I mean by that is if you're thinking about buying a house in 2024, their potential for a back to considerable seller's market. We already know we have low inventory. If interest rates do go down, as I've projected before, and I'll link to the videos above, we could very well see a very competitive market. And just a few years ago, just in the last few years, we've seen these competitive markets where buyers have paid over. So this isn't just a tip or isn't just logic or basic foundations of when you should buy something. This happened to people, many people, and it happened to people that I did a mortgage for that I said, are you sure you're not overpaying here? Because with 17 offers, and you got to pay anything to get it, maybe it's just too much. So number 1 tip is just don't overpay. There's going to be a next property, right? So just understand what the value of the home, connect with that trusted real estate agent. So therefore you can see what other homes in the area, other homes of the same size have gone for, what the appropriate price is, and then you make a decision of what you're going to actually be paying for it. Likely they're going to give you advice of what it's going to take to get the home. But in these cases, you need to understand, do you want to be on that street? Is it important for you to be right down that street or right down from that park or backing up to the forest preserve or whatever it may be? Does that mean you're willing to pay more money for it? Okay, so be it, right? And a lot of people did that. But just because they don't want to keep going into multiple offers or you know, waiting longer and longer and longer, that's not necessarily a reason to overpay. You can't get past that overpayment, right? You can marry the house at a good price, date the rate, and then refinance later. That is all plausible, but you can't change that purchase price. So that is tip number 1. All right, tip number 2. It'll probably sound like I'm talking out both ends of my mouth here, but don't wait. Now, what I mean by don't wait is that if you're waiting till spring or summer of 24 to get into the market, then I think you're going to be sorely mistaken because you're going to be coming in with a ton of other competition. As 2023 ends and as we go into 2024, keeping an active view of what's going on in the market, looking at some listings, maybe even going to open houses, I think is going to be in your best benefit. Don't wait necessarily. Well, let's take this another way. Don't wait, say, till 2025 when things settle down. Home prices are due to continue to appreciate over time. That house is going to be considerably more expensive, in my hypothesis here, in those future years than if you got into it now. So I don't want you to overpay. Yes, that's tip number 1. But I also don't want you to wait 2 years because now you're just paying someone else's rent. If you are renting right now or paying somebody else's mortgage, if you're renting right now, you're paying somebody else's principal and interest. You know, your interest rate is 100% because you're paying somebody else's. If you already own a home and maybe you think, hey, I could eke out a few more years, then I would say balance. What am I going to get in this new home? Is that the yard? Is that a home office? Is that the extra bedroom? Because now we've got kiddo number 2, whatever that may be with what your payment interest rate is, right? Because a lot of people are kind of stuck in that lower interest rate mortgage payment and they don't want to go buy that second home. But if you're a first-time home buyer, that doesn't apply to you. Now, in this case, you're still paying somebody else's mortgage. And if you go a couple more years, the house is going to be worth more and it's going to likely be more difficult. So that is tip number 2. Tip number 3, inspections. Do not waive them. Do not get competitive in your terms to waive said all inspections, right? I saw this a lot during COVID, especially in like 2021 when it got to be a very highly contested market, is that people would start waiving their inspections. So you can go in under a contract as is, absolutely positively, but get yourself an inspection. If you need to get yourself out of that contract, right, then make sure and connect with your attorney on terms of like what options that you have. But please do not just waive it and then omit an inspection. What I mean by an inspection is typically when you go and buy. So if you're a first-time home buyer out there, once you get that contract written, you're typically giving over that first earnest money. Then in X number of days, 2, 3, 5 days, you're getting an inspection on the property. And what happens is an inspector comes out. Let's say it's a single-family home. They're going to look at the roof. They're going to look at the foundation. They're going to look at all the utilities and things like that. They're going to look what's going on in the home and give you kind of a report card. Now, they're there to find things. There's always going to be things on an inspection report. But again, back in 21, I saw a lot of buyers going out and just saying, well, the only way we're going to go get this property is if we waive our inspection. Well, you can go in as is, but then if you find any life and safety issues, if you go into the property with an inspector and you find cracks in the foundation that have been repaired and it's sagging and it looks like this could be a $50,000 structural issue in the future, then this is why you have that inspection, right? You protect yourself in the contract in terms of different contingencies, but do not skip the inspection. Have that as the absolute bottom of like how I'm going to get the home in terms of the cards that you play. But get the inspection, protect yourself in the other contingencies. Try not to overpay again, right? As we talked about before, right now, November, December, January, February, great times where prices are kind of coming down off those highs. So you can get a decent deal, at least right now, before home prices appreciate in the future, which I talked about before. But just don't skip that inspection because there's so many things that could pop up in the future. That could be 1, 2, 5, 10K worth of repairs that potentially you were not expecting. Just go in eyes wide open. So these are your top 3 tips if you're thinking about buying a home in 2024, the top 3 most costly tips, because any of these could end up costing you thousands and thousands of dollars. So put your comments below if you ever ran into this, if you ever heard any stories. I'd love your feedback. Let's create a discussion. If you made it this far in the video, check out these next 2 videos that I've got for you. Click that subscribe, and we'll see each other again very, very soon.